Welcome to ACFIMTalks. A very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and tuning in. This is ACFIMTalks, and today we are discussing a very interesting topic it keeps coming up in the politics of Uganda, and again we are at it. Parliament in focus, the bloated numbers. Is it about the politics of numbers? Or should we now start arguing about how effective we are being represented or overrepresented? With me, I have two distinguished scholars. In fact, they are both scholars in a way or two, but one is a lawyer, another is a scholar and a politician. And I will be moderating this interesting topic. But before we start, let me encourage everybody to tune in and be part of this discussion. We are live on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, ACFIM, on YouTube, ACFIM Uganda, and Twitter at ACFIMUG. You can catch us there and be part of this. Send your questions, your comments. And yes, also keep liking our page and our account, and that you will surely be getting notifications. But before we start, let me first set the stage. Why are we here? Why are we discussing this topic today? As you all remember, and as many of you recall and know, Uganda has a bloated parliament, and it's starting to really wear out the taxpayers. We can't afford, and these numbers don't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And the question is whether they are intended to serve Ugandans or to serve as a tool of entrenching the regime. On average, a legislator takes home 28 million monthly. So the current 11th parliament, we have 529 legislators, and this means that in 5 years, the Ugandan taxpayer, you and me, will part with 1.68 trillion. Remember, this is to mention that these billions are not inclusive of the money we spend on renting the office space at Kingdom Kampala and the hefty per diems for international travels. And what does this mean for Ugandan? And what do we get in return? For example, we've seen squabbles over tweets by Honorable Zaki and what went down yesterday. The useless legislation such as the one that seems to be sponsored by Honorable Sereko. But is this worth it? And what matters most, when it is concerning important issues, they don't show up. When Ugandans are pressed against the wall, for example, we are now grappling with the inflation, Parliament seems to be absent. There have been observations that the House is filled with political dramatist persona. You have individuals who spend even 5 years without joining in Parliament, and the golden question is, do we need those numbers? We have now a small group of legislators that is working on a private member's bill to cut down the numbers so that each district is represented by 2 legislators. If this bill sees the light of day, Uganda will have only 292 legislators. That is if this bill sees the light of day. Before we start, let me put some more perspectives into this discussion, probably to trigger the debate. Kenya, our neighbor here, they have a population of 55 million, but with a Senate of 67 legislators and a lower house of 349. That makes the number slightly lower compared to their population. When you look at India's upper house has 245, and the lower house has 453, making a total of 788 legislators, slightly higher than Uganda's current number of legislators. Remember, India has over a billion people. When we look at Africa's most populated country, Nigeria, which has a population of 206 million Nigerians, it is represented by only 190 senators in the upper house and 360 legislators in the lower house. This is a total of 469 legislators, which makes it 60 MPs or legislators less than that of Uganda. But remember, their population is way over, or much bigger than that of Uganda. So is it an issue of numbers here? Before we start, allow me to introduce my panel of two discussants. With me, I have a scholar and a politician. Many of you know him. All are not seeing him for the first time, but he has been in Parliament 3 times, 8th, 9th, and 10th Parliament. Honorable Mukitale Stephen, you are most welcome to this discussion. You was an MP for Buliisa County. You're most welcome. Okay, I saw my good friend, old friend, Council Isaac Ssemakadde join. But as he joins, let me introduce, yes, Council Ssemakadde is there. It's good to have you. It's good to see you once again, Council Ssemakadde. Those of you who are seeing him for the first time, I don't know whether you've been in Uganda that long enough, but he is a firebrand lawyer and he refers to himself as a legal rebel and is the founder of Legal Brains Trust. He's known for defending human rights, and he also refers to himself as an anti-clockwise thinker. Council Ssemakadde, you're most welcome. Can you hear me? I think you're muted.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Great, am I clear now?
You are most welcome. Okay. Let me start with Honorable. And let me put this to you.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I can hear you very well, Council. Thank you. And Honorable, I can hear you as well. And I'm starting with you on this question concerning. I've just painted a picture of the numbers we have in Parliament. The bigger question is, do we need such a Parliament? And what purpose does it serve? You've been in that house. Do we really need these numbers?
For this very important discourse, more so at a time when the country is having challenges of missed targets of middle income, when we have challenges of increasing poverty, when we are increasingly translating itself into landlessness, and you've had the president talking about stopping evictions. All those are symptoms of economic maladies, economic stagnation, jobless growth, 26 years of UPE, but with jobless graduates. So indeed, Parliament in its traditional role of legislation, of appropriation, of oversight and representation must be seen to be relevant, and therefore providing remedy to some of these challenges. So as we get to 60 years of independence, indeed 530 almost MPs, you cannot defend the numbers, and we could be asking ourselves, how has the numbers of Parliament grown? And when we talk about Parliament numbers increasing, we must also talk about the numbers of districts increasing. So in the name of participation and inclusion, from the NRC expanded, we have been having challenges in the guise of interest groups, more women representation, disabled representation, army representation, and recently elderly representation. The youth have been there, and no wonder the number is catapulting to now 500, almost at 30. We just had Women's Day this week, and you can see women are seen to be in the thing. A woman prime minister, a woman vice president, a woman VP, a woman, all big cabinet posts full of women. First of all, I want to say, as an advocate of national dialogue and equal opportunities, more so regional balance, as a person who moved the motion for regional governments and regional cities, the question would be, does the numbers necessarily translate into more opportunities, more programs? Have we seen the budget percolate and trickle down to the areas which the people we represent need most? The answer is, of course, no. So for me, from the onset, I want to say I am an advocate of national dialogue, and for 15 years in Parliament, what I was saying, we could have in this NDP3 of the Vision 2040 to rethink, to review the decentralization we wanted in form of districts, and also the representation we intended to deliver. One, we are supposed to use the arm of political parties, but the political parties are not are malfunctioning. They are not there in effect. Three, we are supposed to represent districts. The districts, none of the districts in Uganda are economically viable because they are supposed to be economically viable. And that's my worry as a person who moved the city's motion and who has a passion for it and regional government. I am worried even the cities, they are not being well funded. So I think it is time to rethink that with regional governments, we could have regional parliaments, because this country called Uganda is a project of 16 regions of this country, including Bunyoro, Buganda, Bukedi, Teso, Acholi, Lango, Ankole, Chigezi, and all these regions must be seen to be getting equal opportunities. And by the way, Article 178 of the Constitution does provide for regional government. So actually we are now acting unconstitutionally, my NRM government, by denying regional governments, which by constitution are supposed to have started on 1st July 2007, is an illegality. Because I think with that, we don't need so many MPs in parliament. We could do some representation issues at regional level. We could have it's time to have a serious dialogue on whether it is the number of women which will bring development. Yes, at that time it was important to bring in a semblance of symbolism and the motivation that women are equal to men. But we need to start questioning, do we still need women representation in the way we are having it without us getting value for money? Do we still need the army representation in parliament? Do we want to be a civilian government, or we are still stuck in a quasi-military pseudo-democracy therefore? So these are real challenges, but of course, a big parliament comes with costs. It comes with, and unfortunately, you see what's happening now. I refused to buy an ambulance as an MP. My work as an MP was to push for government to provide for health center 3s and health center 4s at every county with an ambulance, with a theater, with what recently COVID reported to us, that we don't have functional referral system, that we don't have MIR, that we don't have oxygen cylinder. So if an effective parliament was pushing for those services to be at every county, then you don't have to say as an MP to be relevant, I am going to buy an ambulance. Indeed, parliamentarians are under a lot of pressure. Parliamentarians are in charge of fundraising, even for government projects. Parliamentarians are, of course, have already the traditional role in cultural institutions and the churches, which were the churches I enjoyed the most, and I have no regret for that, because that's money I think was well spent. But it is very unfortunate that a parliamentarian has become a slave. A parliamentarian wakes up in the morning, has families without school fees, has sick people, has funerals to deal with, has weddings to deal with. So I think we need, first of all, to make the citizens, the civil society, the media, government itself should have a deliberate deliberate effort to make sure that the role of a member of parliament is understood. Before I talk about the numbers, I want us to understand the role of parliament. And if we do, parliamentarians will be more interested in the Vision 24, in the NDP 3, in the budgets, and then that would also make them, their numbers would be secondary, but would say it's a relevant parliament, it's dealing with the challenges of the day. But if we don't do that, then being a parliamentarian has become one of the most laughable things. I am now getting respect because I'm out of parliament. But when you are in parliament, whatever they see you, they think you want more money for a vehicle, they think you are increasing your salary. And by the way, for the 15 years in parliament, not a single day did I discuss my emolument. These things are done by the parliamentary commission, chaired by the speaker, with Minister of Finance, and the constitutional Minister of Finance is actually the president. So but you find everybody, this media is bashing the parliamentarian. These things, these monies, whether silencing MPs or giving them vehicles, is done by the president himself as the constitutional Minister of Finance, the speaker as the chairman of the parliamentary commission. Rarely does even a parliamentarian discuss his welfare.
Thank you. Interesting. I think I had a follow-up question. I hope council can come back, get back on, because for instance, if it is done by the Parliamentary Commission, as a legislator, you also have the responsibility of saying, no, this is too much burden on taxpayers. I will not accept those proposals. But that's a debate for another day. Council, let me bring you in here. What is the value add, in all honesty, what is the value add of such a big parliament to Ugandans?
Thank you very much, Felix, for hosting me on this show. And I'd like to thank the current speaker, Honorable Mukitale, for speaking from the gut, shooting from the hip, and being sincere and patriotic. There are very few of his kind in politics today. To answer your question specifically, Felix, what is the value addition of a massive parliament? Well, one would theorize that it is increased democratic representation, an increase in the democratic dividend. More people are voting more representatives. More representation is, in theory, is supposed to be a good thing. But in reality, we don't have an increased democratic dividend in Uganda. The number has grown. The number of representatives in the August House, in the Legislative Chamber, has grown exponentially. But the quality and even quantity of representation has stagnated. In fact, Parliament is far more powerless today than it was in earlier editions. You have laid out this very clearly in the preamble, that the preoccupation of Parliament in an inflation-prone era, in a time of great pulsation, regionally, nationally, internationally, has been private activity of a member outside Parliament and the insult taken by the parliamentary leader. So again, it shows that Parliament has been anti-democratic in its posture. It has been, if the vote of yesterday also is correct, you have legislators that have been promoting intolerance, have been glorifying intolerant leadership, have been glorifying insulation of leaders from criticism as one of the urgent priorities. So, in short, you have too many parliamentarians without parliamentarianism in them, and that's a tragedy for the country. Yeah. I hope I answered the question properly.
Yeah, you have really answered the question, and you've touched a couple of things concerning quality, concerning how it has stagnated. You talked about the increased democratic dividend in theory, but there's something here because when you look at the bill, the taxpayers, I think I've lost Ssemakadde, but let me first bring in here, Honorable. It talks about the issue of quality, because I have, for example, I have followed the 7th Parliament, the 8th Parliament. You see a very stark difference between those parliaments and the 11th and the 10th Parliament. We seem to. Why is it that the numbers don't seem to correspond with the quality? Have we lowered the bar, that we have more numbers, we've let in more fish, but we have less goldfish in there? We have more of silverfish. Honorable, you're muted.
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Yes, I'm saying, I hope you're not referring to having more fishermen as opposed to Pharisees. The biblical story. Now, I joined Parliament in 2006 when the Secretary General for NRM was Amama Mbabas. And I can tell you, we had honest discussions. We had intellectual debates. We sort of think tanks at that time. So at that time, you could say numbers could give you some value addition, could give you some democratic dividend. But increasingly, numbers, if you follow from the CA, were being mobilized in terms of voting in Parliament. How do you get the NRM, my party, get through what it wants? And I think that's where the problem is. I don't want to refer to the Ginger election when my chairman said, even if you sleep and wake up and vote on the side of NRM, you would be a more useful MP. Now, sincerely, these are things we need to not accept. I'm a grandfather now. I'm no longer discussing national issues for my own bread. I'm above that level. I'm looking at what we bequeath the generations to come. That cannot be the reason of increasing women MPs. I don't know what group and what group and what group. So I'm raising this because the numbers come from political parties. If political parties had ideological clarity, whether in government or opposition, whether the opposition is FDC or RONU, it doesn't matter, although now they are eating each other as if they are grasshopper, Mao is Noob, and I don't know what. But I am saying, if my NRM political party, which has the numbers, and the NRM caucus is going to take the day anyway, we should not turn our numbers into a mob, into tyranny of numbers. Because we have the numbers, NRM has brought something, the loan has come for a hospital on Entebbe Road, and we just pass because we are NRM. It's not proper. It's not proper. I remember my first time I abstained was not this, the age limit thing. My first time I abstained as a person who used to come to Kampala around Shimon. I abstained in taking a vote on demolition of Shimon College and primary school for a Chogam hotel called Kingdom, which never anyway happened. And I thank God I never voted that way. But to my NRM party, I was supposed to be disciplined. I opposed the Ujagali project because I knew a PPP would kill us. I'm happy my president, after 12 years, said, oh, this was a very big mistake. I opposed the Uganda borrowing for refugees. After 6 months, I was blamed. After 6 months, the president agreed with me. I opposed the budget when I found it was not aligned to the NDP 2. And that fiasco where I was being taken by Amambabazi, the Prime Minister, and Secretary and the Chief Whip, Justin Lumumba, for disciplinary, I ended up taking the day and NRM forming a presidential advisory committee on budget. So I think it is possible to engage. But if that NRM caucus, which has the numbers anyway, and Parliament operates on numbers, could have some semblance of the discussion we had in the 8th Parliament. I saw it deteriorating in the 10th Parliament, and it was worse. It became worse by the time I left in 10th Parliament. So it is true that Parliament is increasingly becoming intolerant, very radicalized, very sentimental, very fanatic, extremist, and that's not good for the country. Because a parliament, one of the reasons why I'm an advocate of national dialogue, parliament is a dialogue. When you have one side without the other, it's called a monologue. I'm not talking about the other monologue you used to talk about. It becomes a monologue. So parliament adds value if it is a dialogue. And the opposition should not be criminalized. Opposition should not be demonized. Opposition is not adversarial. Opposition is an alternative. And that's why we should be looking at options, and alternative comes with alternative policies, and we discuss. I'm coming from Buliisa, the oil and gas area. I have not had any useful debate in that parliament about the recoverable cost. I've not had any useful debate in that parliament about the local content. We made a law to the effect that 48% of that $10 billion now with the first phase will go to local content. There's not that debate in parliament that direction. We are talking of throwing out this stubborn man from, he's also an extremist, from Mitiana. Yet there are serious issues to be discussing right now. $10 billion is going to be invested in the next 3 years. Is Uganda getting the 40%? How much is Uganda spending in this oil? Why are we pushing for the pipeline to Tanga without pushing for the refinery? The refinery and industrial park is where we get industries, is where we get value addition, is where we get beneficiation. So is Parliament, why is Parliament preoccupied? The Bible says we have left undone what we ought to have done, and we are doing what we are not supposed to do, and the truth. So that's my challenge, that Parliament should increasingly, even with their numbers, I wish they could be more relevant in those areas.
Okay, all right. Councillor Ssemakadde, can I get you back on set? It would be great to bring you in here and weigh in. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good. Looking at the size of this parliament, who profits from such a parliament? Who is the biggest beneficiary? Let me put that question bluntly to you.
Well, the executive, the presidency.
How?
Yes. Plus the post holders themselves. To understand how the presidency, and I'm being very careful with my words here, but I should say a dictatorship, or the dictatorship benefits. The presidency is relieved of the burden of a clear and sharp parliamentary oversight function. You see, too many cooks spoil the broth. You know, it is much harder now for voices of reason, like that of Honorable Stephen here, to stand out in a parliament of sleepers, fishermen or fisherwomen, and fascists, radicals, as he has really laid it out. So when you create a gang that is oversized, you can get out with so much. I think this has been properly written about by Gene Sharp in the book From Dictatorship to Democracy, where he argues that dictators can create dictatorship, can influence dictatorship by appearing to democratize, create more elections, more electable posts. You know, that should not be very difficult to comprehend. And actually, it is the smart dictatorship. And President Museveni should be commended. He shall be commended in history for having been one of the early transformers, to use that word in the most vulgar form. Other dictators continue to refuse elections, to keep parliament small, but smart ones understood what Sharp explained and says that actually you can destroy democracy through democracy. You know. So to answer your question, who is the biggest beneficiary? It is the president. It is a dictatorship. It is, and all the forces and interests that a dictator protects, promotes, like imperialism, nepotism, hegemony, all the evils, and all the evil people that can hide behind an unfettered president. So they benefit because parliament becomes, quite frankly, a joke. If it is too oversized to function properly.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you so much.
That's my answer.
I'm going to come back on that one because I'm going to build another point, which leads us into another question after the break. Let's break for a minute, then we'll resume this discussion.
Welcome, my people. A cup of coffee, please. There is tea, everything. Snacks are on the way.
Thanks, but the reason that's why we are here, our people need improved defense services. We at least need an ambulance at every center.
My sub-county is the forest. We used to depend on the former MP's vehicle, but when he lost his elections, he took away his vehicle.
Of course.
So what does that mean?
Use your budget as a district to procure the ambulances.
If I could, I would. But unfortunately, government operates differently.
I'm saying, Chairperson, this is very serious and urgent.
Yes. I know. And why are they called local leaders then?
Local government.
You people, who sent you here?
I know, of course. We are concerned citizens who are watching people dying every day.
We've lost our beloved ones just because of poor health services.
Yes.
Something has to be done.
You are right. Something has to be done, and very fast.
Yes.
That's transport for you. Go back.
But
All your concerns are taken care of. I will handle.
But
Have a
Chairman,
safe journey.
Thank you so much.
but this money seems to undermine our cause as to why we're here.
No, don't misunderstand me. This is just transport, no strings attached.
Chairman, we came here to discuss and find solution to our problems. But it seems you don't want to engage with us. Let's go and mobilize people, and you will see how serious we are.
Good citizens, let us always hold our leaders accountable. Leadership is a service, not a privilege.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
You are still watching ACFIMTalks, and we are discussing the bloated parliament, politics of numbers and effective representation. Your host, Felix Kafuma, and with me I have two discussants. I have Mukitale Stephen, Honorable, been in Parliament 3 times, but I also have Isaac Ssemakadde, who is he heads Legal Brain Trust, and he is a human rights activist. And before we went for a break, Council, you are clearly in black and white saying that the presidency or the president, to be very specific, and all those that feed off him are the biggest beneficiaries of such a bloated, almost dysfunctional parliament. But then a follow-up question. I'm sure you've followed the discussions. There's an idea mooted whereby a few legislators are pushing for reduction in the size of parliament, in the numbers. And they're saying that a district can be represented by just 2 legislators, male and female. Do you see this seeing the light of day? Is this just a joke, diversionary? Because it seems to be a very good proposal, but given the context you've presented, who benefits more? Do you see this coming to see the light of day?
Is that my question, Felix, or for the Honorable?
It's a follow-up. I'll come back to you, Honorable.
Okay. Well, I sympathize with the movers of that proposal. I don't see it having a chance at all, because it is blatantly unconstitutional. Representation of the people is properly prescribed in Chapter 5 of our Constitution. And it is one of those areas on which extensive consultation was done, commended by the Odoki Commission. So the people of Uganda set a proper vision how they want it to be represented in Chapter 5 and Chapter 7. I think that's Chapter 6, sorry, on Parliament. So this very fashionable and simplistic proposal is dead on arrival, because whatever be its good intentions, the effects, the negative effects are overwhelming. Consider the following, just 2 of them. One, it will not take away the problem of excessive districting, to create again the evil of tyranny of numbers in Parliament. The tyrants will excessively district Uganda beyond what we have seen. So it is a path to a downward spiral that we will not contemplate. It may create more of the problem that is existing than it's solved. The second thing then is that it takes representation to an already existing political unit known as a district, which has representation. So it's a moribund principle. In that regard, it fetishizes districts, as if districts need an additional. In Uganda, we call it a kijinji. As if districts are insufficient in representation of the people. They are sufficient represented. There's just a lot of districts themselves represent a massively bloated political, dispensation too. So for me, for those reasons, I don't like it. But overall, the most important thing is that any claims for reform should be for implementation of Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 properly. In Chapter 5, we have Articles 63, 64, 65, and 66, which have never been implemented to the letter. Article 63. Let me start with 62.
Yeah, what do they speak to?
The Electoral Commission shall be independent and not subject.
Yeah, proceed. Yes.
Who says the Electoral Commission shall be independent and not subject to the direction or control of another personal authority. Well, that is not true. I think you guys have abundant evidence. But it becomes so untrue when you see Article 63, 64, 65, and 66. The provisions on how we get a constituency. These provisions were pushed aside. People in Parliament, clever people, smart Alex, Parliament, invented the word county. And they saw that as long as Parliament can approve a county, we shall interpret these provisions to mean that every county shall be represented in Parliament. So we have this conflict between a county and a constituency. Parliament was required to prescribe constituencies following a formula that is set in the Constitution, a formula that starts with a census. Now, we've had 2 censuses, and every time we had a census, we haven't invoked any of these articles to conduct a proper formulation of constituencies. I don't know if I'm very clear, Felix.
Yes. I hear you very well. And let me first
every time we had a census. Yeah. So
just a minute. First hold it there. First hold it there on the article. Councillor Ssemakadde, just first hold it there on the article of 63 on that. Yes, you talked about the conflict between constituency and the county, and I want to ask you, Honorable Lawyer and Mukitale.
Yes, please.
Deliberately circumventing the provision that speak to how a constituency should be created to provide for more numbers in Parliament. Is there some kind of like a connivance between Parliament and executive exploiting and disregarding these provisions that Council is speaking to?
Now, let me first of all, as an advocate of national dialogue, agree with the Council, Isaac, that the President is more powerful than Parliament. My 2 professors, Nsibambi, may so rest in peace, and Professor Mamdan, used to really to dissuade us from the presidentialism. So Uganda is under a presidentialism plus a deep state with a kitchen cabinet, some powers. People with powers are not even in cabinet, are not even in Parliament. Sometimes president is more powerful than the army. The president is more powerful than the NRM party. So sometimes you don't know whether you want to operate as a military government or you want to become a monarchy. And you can even see the debate of succession is no longer the traditional one. In a normal democracy, the debate should be between the ruling party, succession plan, or the opposition, which one will win. But ours is now purely military and within the family. So that's how far we have deteriorated. And Ugandans are comfortable. Ugandans are very comfortable with that state of affairs. If that does not show you we required a national dialogue yesterday, because one of the reasons why I abstained in the presidential age limit, I am for reducing powers of the president. And one way to reduce powers of the president is those regional governments. Whereas those 500 and almost 30 MPs in parliament all belong to regional caucuses, they have failed to operationalize what empowers them to be a regional government with a budget. You have a Bunyoro Affairs Ministry without $1 billion in a year. You have Teso Affairs Ministry without $1 billion in a year. So MPs will have become a laughing stock. So for me, that's why I'm an advocate of a national dialogue, which has a national conference, which starts with a comprehensive constitutional review commission, not these piecemeal legislation, age limit, term limit, I don't know what. Yes, I want to support the reduction of powers of the president. You can do it through a parliament, but it's not be the only one, because there are over 38 constitutional amendments which were brought to the 9th parliament, but were not discussed in 10th parliament. We have a citizens compact which involved the late Professor Nsibambi, Justice Ogola, women in station room, eminent women, cultural leaders. Citizens must be listened to. The state of affairs today, my NRM party and the opposition, which is dead, can no longer say in iPod, you're going to discuss. The parliament, I've told you, is no longer a dialogue. It's a monologue. It's dead. So we really need a comprehensive extra NRM, extra politician, national dialogue, so that we look at these very serious issues seriously. Otherwise, any piecemeal debate of those who are saying you're going to reduce the number of constituencies, please, it is a power retention project. It's a power retention project in CA that they wanted more numbers in CA. It was got. It was got when Ssemakadde was standing. Bulimbuzi kunkondo yayo. NRM was scared with Ssemakadde going with the former opposition members. That's when transactional politics started. People are paid a lot of money in every election to make sure that finally the numbers are there. So this thing is deliberate. It's a power retention project by my NRM government. And for me, we just have to stop this denial and accept that the situation is so bad that we need to, we should have proactively prevented it yesterday, and we should be moving in a direction of making sure that the country goes to real governance, because the country is overrepresented. The districts do not meet their budgets, because apart from what Isaac says, the numerical strength, the numerical numbers of a constituency, of a district, there is economic viability. The Constitution talks about economic. None of this is. So there is a beggar syndrome. Now the president, he gives every bishop who is sworn in, is giving. Why don't you put this money in the budget under the Ministry of Gender, which is in charge of religious affairs, rather the Ministry in charge of religious affairs, the one for cultural leaders in the Ministry in charge of cultural affairs, so that, but the moment that money, the trillions around the president spend, plus the 280 donations, is much more money than given the Ministry of Culture, that given in the very minute. So I want to let you to again, you ACFIM, you one of your major areas of campaign financing. So you find throughout the whole budget of the country, votes are being bought. Civil society is being compromised. The cultural institutions are being compromised. Each king is in the president's car. They don't call it a government of Uganda donated the car. They say the president has given. Every bishop, the other day was in Kumi, was it Kumi? Ngora, I saw a new bishop getting a vehicle from. So all those are challenges. The powers of the president is a demigod. And that's why you can see these Nook boys are being bought day and night. They have already gone to State House. They have received the money. You can see in last parliament, we had an opposition member buying opposition people and even taking the NRA put me. So that's the state of affairs. So parliament has become so transactional. Politics has become so you even sometimes start questioning citizenship of some of our leaders, because I'm not saying Citizen because you are born in Uganda, not biological birth, and this national ID of yours, which foreigners get more than Ugandan. I'm saying citizenship in terms of the statesmanship, taking care of your country, because all these transactional things are in vanity. The Bible talks of vanity in vanity. At the end of the day, what is going to happen? However much you do, this power retention project is not sustainable. I was telling people, there's another debate yesterday about this land evictions. That's stopping land eviction. Why don't you stop land grabs? Why are you talking about land evictions? Let's go back to 1986, our NRM celebrated year. Can we go back to who owned land in 1986, put up another Bamgemerere investigation and say, how did this land change from Bunyoro growers? How did this land change from Bunyoro kingdom? How did this Kinyara Sugar Works change? Before you start saying stop evictions and give aspirin, Panado, I don't know, to silence people. Land has been grabbed by my people in NRM. In Buliisa, you know why I'm out of parliament? It's because I said, no, you guys, you don't come and take land because there is oil wells here, there is a pipeline here, there's going to be compensations, and you evict all the 69 villages which were there. But you see the price we are paying. When you push and say, we don't want to hear people who want to control costs of oil. We want to question the energy generators who are taking money from the country. We want to check those who are taking money for rent in government, but we cannot buy houses. Then the next thing they say, as we produce this oil, this money must be out. He blocked us from acquiring the land of oil and gas. He's not does. He wants to control the cost of producing oil. He wants to promote low content. This man is a spoiler. Let's get it. And that's the deep state. So the president is also a hostage to his deep state. He's a hostage of criminals. The country, we are held hostages. And I think the national dialogue is the only way to take this country back to the right path. Otherwise, we are dealing with a very tall order. But as citizens, we cannot despair. We cannot resign. This country belongs to our grandchildren. And I want to encourage everybody that, including my NRM, you don't have to be opposition to see what's wrong in my government. My government has very, very, very big challenges. We are spending trillions where we should not spend them, where we know they should be required in health, in education, in vocationalization. You know, it's not where we are putting the money. So that's where the challenge is. Why do you have money for Paris models, for Myoga, for Bonabagagawale, for I don't know NADS yesterday, but you don't have money to revamp the cooperatives which we knew which used to work. You don't have money to put in place a national bank. You don't have money to, the areas we know which worked. We know, I'm an economist. We know areas, the Uganda Development Corporation model which worked. Why don't we want to put money where it works? Now, we realize that we have failed at 60 years of independence to transform. We can't get middle income. We are stuck in agriculture, peasant agriculture, yet the land has been taken away, almost 60% by very few people who are not even entrepreneurs, who are not even producing. So, what do you say? Stop land evictions. What do you say? Emioga. What do you say? Paris model. I am not aware of any single country in the world which has developed out of handouts. We know what works, that cooperatives work, banks, the country, you need to incentivize those success stories, demonstration effect, people with proven performance. You don't make the assemblies fail. You don't make the cooperatives fail. You don't sell the Ugandan banks, and then you say you are bringing Myoga, you are bringing Paris model. No, let us be honest. There is a dialogue required in economy, on the land matter, on the education system, on the powers of the president vis-a-vis that of parliament, the role of military in government, and that's why I am for national dialogue. It was required yesterday. And we have spent too much money in this military, in intelligence, all that should be when we have a national dialogue.
Okay, Honorable, you've made your point very clear. You are agitating for a national dialogue. Let me bring you in here, Council Councillor Ssemakadde. I hope I have you. Council, are you there? Did I lose you a bit? I think okay, it's back. Council, because I cut you a little bit midway when you were presenting. I think you were trying to show us the articles that have been that have been exploited for us to have the numbers we have at the moment. And I ask myself a question which I'm actually going through to you is what can we do? Many of us see that we don't need this bloated parliament. We all know that there's a connivance to grow the numbers in parliament, but as a citizen, for example, if I'm challenging the bulging numbers, am I powerless? What is it that citizens can do to challenge the current status quo, the current tyrant of numbers that is a struggle between individuals who are benefiting from these numbers in parliament? What can we do? Councillor, can you hear me? Did you get my question? I think I'm losing Councillor a bit. When Councillor gets back, I'll bring back that question. Let me come to you, Honourable, because you're very clear on the issue around having a dialogue. But there have also been discussions concerning that is it possible to address the issue of quality, that we separate. We have two chambers in parliament. You have the upper chamber and the lower chamber, and then in the upper chamber we have the likes of you who think differently, who think patriotically, who can give us good debate on national issues, and then all these other, for lack of a better word, hoodlums and those comedians go into the lower council. Do you think separating the chambers in parliament will solve the issue of quality? Not necessarily solve numbers, but the issue of quality in parliament?
The occupational hazard of a member of parliament and a politician in Uganda has become very too much. Credible people will soon stop going into parliament. A professor in the university, a manager in a corporate world, you find it very reckless and very expensive to go to parliament. When I see where I come from and the time sometimes, yes, I thank God as a believer for what I've been able to do in parliament. But I wish we could do better. So parliament is increasingly becoming for people without sense of remorse, people without any sense of shame, transactional parliament, deals are cut in parliament, and if you don't want to be part of that, you're seen as an odd man out. This is how unfortunate it is. I oppose this thing of saying you must resign for you to be elected. My view was that when you win an election, you should be, that's when you should resign. Then you would attract quality. So who is going to resign in a corporate world, to resign in his public service, to go for a gamble in parliament, even when Ivirawa wins, Buliisa is not declared? Somebody else whom you've never had in parliament is declared a winner. So the risk is too much. So that's point number one, where we have missed out on getting, I went to parliament when Professor Nsfandi was the leader of government business. And Professor, the opposition also had a professor. And we had so many other professors, like who my professor was, who was my body at NMS. And you really feel you're in the right place. You find people like Atubos in parliament, you find experts in parliament, Engineer Byandalas in parliament. Somebody who has been a Kampala city engineer. So, but that quality is not going to come. Now, you're going to see more people in developed world. Parliamentarians come from institutions called parliament. Parliament espouse some clear ideological position. They have some values. There could even be some lobbyists. They could even be financing. But there is environmentalists. There is a conservatives. There is a pro-workers. There is extreme capitalists. But in our case, we do not have that kind of clear-cut interest groups that you come to parliament to espouse the interest of the private sector of Uganda. It is not there. That's why you find parliamentarians discussing tax bills without understanding the tax policy. That's why you find parliamentarians are pushed to discuss very abstract things without clear policy. You bring a law without a policy because government is taking advantage of that gray area of where people are not clear in terms of policy, in terms of plan, and therefore they will jump on anything. And as I talked about the tyranny of numbers of my NRM caucus, the eyes have it. So that's where we have reduced it to. And we really need, and that's why for us who speak of a nation, we are aware of this quagmire, of this political malaise, of these economic challenges that we need to look. So we don't have political parties in Uganda with an ideology. What's the ideology of NRM? What's the ideology of NU? What's the ideology? Zero. They don't even qualify to be political parties. Now, on top of that, you don't even allow these political parties to go back in their regions and talk to the people. And the people elect them as a choice given information. People just get voted. I'm not only talking about this COVID scientific election, but people are elected without even knowing who they are. Yeah? You talk about Mwanyi and Umbrella. There are people who are asking themselves, whom did we vote as an MP? And I'm not attacking Nook for that. I am just saying.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you short there. Yeah.
The quality of parliament, it requires a national dialogue. The political parties must be in existence. It's the architecture. You can't do a good construction if you have a wrong architecture. So let's really agree. Our country has a challenge, and then we can have a dialogue.
All right. Someone has always argued that probably we've never moved away from individual merit. That even all these issues around party, probably people are still stuck in individual merit. But before I lost you, Council Ssemakadde, I was trying to first of all allow you to finish up because you were making a point around how Articles 63, 64, 65 have been played with. But most importantly, the issue is, as you make that point, it's about if I'm a Ugandan, me and you and others who are well-meaning, don't we have provision or where we base or opportunities to challenge this tyranny that is happening? How do we stop the numbers as a citizen? Where are our opportunities and where is our power to stop these numbers? Wow. Again, I've lost Council Isaac, and I have 10 minutes to wrap this up. So if Council comes back, I will then give him the opportunity to give the last word. But as we come to the end, remember you're still watching ACFIMTalks, brought to you by ACFIM, the political finance watchdog, and we are coming towards the end of the show. But Honorable, this other question which I want you to help us with, when you look at the 11th Parliament, something strange happened. They decided not to carry over the 10th Parliament's business, which had been left unattended to, but the 10th Parliament had agreed that business can now be handled by the 11th Parliament. And then when the 11th Parliament came into play, they disregarded all those other pending bills carried forward that should be carried forward, and they said they will start on a clean slate. So what do we see now? We are seeing a parliament that is concerning itself more on trivial issues. So, first of all, are we wrong to think that the 11th Parliament, by that act alone, is renegotiating on its mandate? That is one question. And as you wrap it up also, when you look at the 4 functions of Parliament, which one can you comfortably say, okay, I think on this one, Parliament is trying?
Let me first confirm that Parliament lost its independence. Parliament is now an extension of the executive. And that's the presidentialism I was talking about. That was the tyranny of my NRM caucus. And it's unfortunate because we have lost separation of powers. We have lost checks and balances. So our 4 functions of Parliament cannot be done unless you know that Parliament is supposed to check on the executive, the separation of power, not necessarily to fight everything government, but Parliament should add value. And I don't see that happening because we are in the time of extremists in my NRM, and the opposition also have not helped themselves. Matthias Puga had tried when he gave a legislative agenda, and he had been proactive. He had put government on defensive. I don't know why he lost it, because that was the best way as an alternative government, alternative policies. He started well, but he has since also lost it. I pray that he gets back his form. And I'm not wishing opposition well because I am in opposition. I am a citizen. I love my country more than NRM. And NRM will not be in slumber if we have an effective opposition which is checking on us. You see, whereas parliamentarians change, Parliament has an institution memory. Parliament has departments. Parliament has secretariats, has the Hansards. The tradition has been the business of the previous Parliament is saved. So when Parliament begins, you don't start as if Uganda is being born that day. The business which was on order paper is saved and is declared. The following business has been saved, and you pronounce yourselves on it. So you pick, because you have already spent money on petitions, you have spent money on motions, you have spent money on bills, and some of them are on the second reading, on the first reading. So really, unless you are not a citizen, why would you say, I've quashed everything, I'm starting afresh, this institute called Rebecca Kadaga is no more Rebecca Kadaga, we want a new name. I think that's again people being so preoccupied with personal egos. Egocentrism is bad for a country. It has killed this country. Of course, nepotism is everywhere. It is in State House. It is in ministries. I have seen it in oil and gas. It is as if some families trained themselves for the last 20 years. They have got themselves jobs. Even I'm seeing it in local content. They are taking all the contracts for oil and gas as if they are no other Ugandans. So people have even lost sense of shame to say that some of these things are being fun. So ideally, you have legal department, you have budget office, you have Parliament has an institution memory. I don't know why we can say there is no business in Parliament. A lot of that business could have been saved, and Parliament would have spent at least the first 1 year deliberating of unfinished business of 10th Parliament, and that's what makes us a country. You know, that's what makes, because that's why it's called 11th Parliament. It's not the first Parliament. So you should build on what good was done, correct what was not good, and then the country moves on. So clearly, that's another confirmation. The national dialogue was required yesterday. People are so personal vendetta. People are so egocentric. We have lost this thing called Uganda. Everything is about a few individuals. Kadaga must be finished completely. Jacob Olanya is my classmate. Before he went to law, we did economics with me. But I can tell you, even Jacob Olanya has lost powers of that Parliament. Powers are elsewhere. Deep state is everywhere.
Okay. Great. Council, glad to have you back. You came in just to wrap this up. I'll give you 5 minutes, and you'll be the last person to nail this home. what can we do in such circumstances where that we find ourselves in? Is there anything a citizen can do? Does the law provide opportunities for us to challenge this tyranny of numbers? Or we are held hostage, we can do nothing about it? How do we challenge this?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Felix, for this question. The law does provide for a tribunal for disputes regarding constituencies, their creation, their demarcation, their boundaries, their number. That tribunal is supposed to be set up by the Chief Justice. It's supposed to comprise of at least 3 judges. That provision is Article 65 and 66 of the Constitution.
Wow. I actually become a scholar and I'm getting those articles and just straight away get into action. Let's talk about Article 65, 66 that speak creation of a tribunal to address issues around creation of district, demarcations, and all that. I hope I can have you back on that one because you are driving a very important point home of what can we do as disgruntled citizens to challenge this digitization and tyranny of numbers. Council, can you get back online and we hammer this home? Okay, he's back online.
Am I back?
Yes, proceed.
Yes. Unfortunately, even the author of this clause, Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki, did not perform his constitutional duty of establishing this tribunal. For 18 years that he was the Chief Justice, he ignored this provision. Katreve, who also was a member of the Constitutional Constituent Assembly, another author of the Constitution, for the 5 or so years he was Chief Justice, he ignored this particular provision. Alphonse Chigamoy Owinidolo, who also was in the CA, was an MP and is aware of this provision and is now Chief Justice, has also refused, ignored, neglected, deliberately shut his eyes to this provision. I wrote to him personally upon being appointed and I told him we need our tribunal so that we can contest the legality, the size and the number of constituencies. Chigamoy is pretending like ostrich head in the sand to have heard nothing, to have seen nothing. But I wrote to him twice. The next thing I will do is to sue him and embarrass him. But these are the hypocritical elites that lead this country. These are rent seekers. These are thieves. These are people not worthy being grandfathers. They are thieves through and through, political thugs. To answer your question, the judiciary is capable or would otherwise have been. But if you look at the judiciary being rotten from the top, the judiciary has contributed a lot to the bloated parliament by the Chief Justices ignoring the provisions in Articles 63, 64, 65, and 66. That is high treason. That shows you the fundamental dishonesty. Our politics was properly organized by those who wrote this constitution. They knew. We wouldn't be here if we had our tribunals. That's tribunal. But somebody has kettled that tribunal. That person is known. Currently, it is the current holder of this post known as Chief Justice. So there is your answer. There is a lack of rationality, of course, in Parliament, in how they make decisions around suffrage representation. One of the best examples is that Honorable Stephen Mukitale has stressed. In Article 79 and 80, Parliament was supposed to review interest groups representation, including that of the army, with a view to doing away with them because they served a transient purpose. Women are already represented by the direct representatives. It was affirmative action. Now it has been made a permanent clause, literally in practice. You know, is there a rationality in continuing? Does Parliament even conduct a review? Has Parliament ever received the report that these provisions are still necessary? Has Parliament even ever debated this issue? No. It is taken for granted. In other words, there has been no review. The review that the Constitution anticipated to happen, the consultation of the people on whether or not the army needs to maintain representation in Parliament 25 years after the Constitution, on whether affirmative action for women should continue and continue in this format, in the format it was imagined in 1996. Can't we imagine a new format? Can't we have them here as regional MPs and not like for youth? Why should they be so abundant? I don't know. But these are questions for the people. They have never been put to the people. They remain to cabal. There are many things, but again, the place to question these questions is the courts of law. But our courts also dropped the ball. They no longer question the rationality of political decisions. Yet they are supposed to. So our constitutional court became a constitutional carcass a long time ago. It cannot help us resolve. In fact, at one time, it even declared a petition null and void for raising a political question. That is how dead the constitutional court is. A court that was created to settle political decisions was rejecting a petition for raising political questions.
Oh, okay.
All right, the Supreme Court settled the issue and said, no, don't send out the people's issues. Listen to them. But I doubt the point made here is that you don't only have foul numbers in Parliament, you also have foul numbers in the judiciary. So the decision is not about to be resolved, you know. We also have a bloated judiciary full of rent seekers, gap fillers, wigs,
All right.
robes, but no justice in them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a better way of ending this show. You throw the ball in the courtyard of the judiciary. That they have the capacity to end or rein in this Parliament. That was Council Isaac Ssemakadde, who is the founder and the director of Legal Brain Trust, a human rights activist, and he refers to himself as a rebel lawyer. It was good to have you here. Very good discussions. I also with me had Honorable Mukitale Stephen, who is the former MP for Buliisa County, who was in the 8th, 9th, and the 10th Parliament. He's both a scholar and a politician. It was good to have you here. My name is Felix Kafuma, who was moderating this discussion. Until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye. We keep the conversation going online. God bless.